This is so exciting. Not only is this the very first edition of Sound Files, but we will meet a true innovator, a one-man orchestra, a collector of strange and beautiful instruments, a master of live looping and live performance, Binkbeats. This is Unset and you are welcome to the Sound Files. Tonight there's a Binkbeats concert at the Ampere in Munich and we got an appointment. So it's time to make up our minds what to ask him, and there's so many questions. First, I want to know where the name Binkbeats comes from. So I looked it up at the Dutch English dictionary and it's supposed to mean something like tight. And that's what I want to ask him, if he has an association to tight beats or something.
No, the name Binkbeats comes from the fact that my friends called me Bink for a very long time. And that came from, it derived from my last name, which is Bink. But I was living for a long time near a Chinese place where I would order food over the phone and they would not understand my name correctly. So that's how I turned into Mr. Bink.
Another question I want to ask him is about Kitopia. That's some kind of collective in Utrecht where he comes from, and there's so many famous people in there like Black Sun, Empire and Kipski.
It's a collective of, mostly musicians, but there's some other disciplines as well. It's like a creative hub, you know. So, and it's been formed by, it's named after the guy that formed with the idea, Kite Man. He used to have a very big band where I was in, as well as a percussionist. Well, later we turned it, that turned into the Kitopia thing.
Of course, I want to know if there's some kind of collaboration between all those people there.
There are some collaborations from Kitopia. It's like not happening like all the time. I mean, people obviously also do their own stuff. Black Sun Empire is like doing their thing, and Colin, like Kite Man, Colin Benders, he's like doing now Modular stuff. But there are still, there are some connections between people. You know, they walk in. For example, on my EPs, on my latest EP, I have there's some strings that a guy who has a cello player that has a studio there as well. He recorded that for me. So in that way, there's lots of little connections. You know, like, hey, you want to check out this song, you want to maybe play something on it, and like this. There's a lot of little connections.
And as Colin Benders, one of the big names in the modular world, is also part of the collective, I want to ask Binkbeats whether he also plans to integrate some kind of modular stuff into his rig.
Maybe one day I'll get into the modular stuff, but I don't know. For me, I come from a background as a percussionist, so I need to have these analog objects and instruments to play on. And also I notice I always get a little aversion, like when everybody's into something, like I'm like, okay, I don't mess with that. I'll check it out later, you know, when everybody's a bit cooled down from it. So maybe in the future I will actually, but until now I'm managing perfectly fine without.
I think one of the things that makes Binkbeats so appealing is that you can clearly identify where the single sounds come from. There's one object that makes one sound.
Yes, that's basically the problem with electronic music, I guess, that things aren't visible in that sense. Like a rock band, you see all the people playing their instruments, but like one guy or multiple guys behind just laptop, just turning some knobs. It's hard to identify like what that really does, and I mean it's a big question, like if it's making music, you know, but I think it also depends. Like for them, the making music part is in the pre-production, right? So and it's, you can compare it more to a DJ, I guess, and but yeah, I mean the fact that you see all those objects or instruments making a certain sound makes you connect to it, and yeah, so I always see like the crowd is always a bit. I mean, sometimes I ask them to dance, but they don't dance because they're just like watching like every move that I do, like, oh, what is he taking now? And you know, what instrument is that? So yeah, I mean, I guess that's the sort of core of what I do, and why it's attractive for people to come and see it.
One of the instruments that stands out of that pattern is the Organelle from Critter and Guitari, which is a little computer basically, and I want to know if he creates his own PD patches for that, or what his approach to that is.
I bought it to program. Well, I'm not so much of a programmer, but I thought like I want to dive into this. But until now, didn't get the time to actually do that. So I was and there are quite some patches coming out every now and then. So until now, I've been just playing around with the patches that are in there. And there are already so many possibilities with that. So yeah, although I don't take the Organelle with me live, because it's a little bit tricky to set up within a live setup, I think. But I use it very much as a creative tool in the studio.
Of course, I will also ask him about his history, how he came to be Binkbeats.
It was not like a pre-set up plan. It sort of happened because I was preparing for a gig where I needed to accompany MC just on my own. So I thought, you know, I'll try and see what I can do with loops, and you know, a friend of mine, he came in the studio and he saw me do that, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna record this. And so this is basically what the first movie is, and this is how the idea started. And for me, it was it all came together by, you know, all the things I was doing, like producing producing music, like my life as a percussionist, and all these things were sort of melting together in this new form that I just found. And so I wanted to investigate in it. So I just started copying songs that I knew or liked, and see if I could recreate them. For me, it was like a learning process. And while doing that, I also started making my own music in this new sense. But I had to find like, because it was completely new, it like took me some time to find like my new identity within this form.
Also, I want to know about how he starts and arranges tracks, if he thinks about one instrument and checks out what goes with that or whatever.
Every time, like, it's a new quest how you start a new song. I mean, sometimes it comes from, you know, fiddling around with a new instrument, or something, you know, or on the guitar, and you find something, it's like, oh, maybe that's nice, and you record it, and then slowly I start to build layers around it, like just stacking lots of layers. And then I start to work on the form, you know, but every time it's a long search how to get to the end product, you know, what's missing, what's needed, like what should the sound be, what should the sound world be. But sometimes I also just start within the computer, just on my laptop. Just everything in the box, and then I find like acoustic variations of the electronical things later on. So there's like multiple ways for me to start a new song, and but every time it's like a sort of, yeah, it's like a path of just stacking layers and then going through them, seeing what works, what not, and then slowly build like a form. I always compare it to like a sculpting, a sculpture. So you have this rough form, and you start to first do the big chunks, and then it starts to be like smaller, detailed stuff every time, so until it's perfect. So this is how I construct my songs.
What absolutely strikes me is how he keeps track of all the things he records into Ableton, and if he doesn't get lost.
No, not so much, because for me the performance is routine, and this is what I learned from studying percussion at the conservatorium, that everything, I mean, my whole songs have a routine. Like I first play this, then I get this, then I take these sticks, I press this button, then I sing, and then I go to the next thing, and so everything, there's like this whole order, this sequence of things that I studied, and I think my background as a percussionist helped me with that, because within percussion music it works very much like that as well. You have like different instruments, you have different sticks for each instrument, so it's also about logistics, like where do you put your sticks, and grab and change the sticks, and then play here, grab them, change it to there, and so it's also a logistic process, and this is, yeah, it's the same for me here. So it's very much a routine, and the more you do it, the more easy the routine gets, and you can do it without thinking almost, To
me, the recording and playback of all the loops and the live performance almost looks like a meditative process.
Yeah, I never approached it that way, but especially in the beginning it was very hard, because I the feeling like my head was exploding, because I had to remember so many things. But now I totally don't feel that anymore. It's like, yeah, once you get into that routine, it's just like, it goes, and suddenly I'm at the end of the concert already.
As the structure of the songs is pre-prepared, I want to know if there's improvisation in his sets.
I mean, there are some parts that I can, that I am free in I mean, every cue I press to go on, so I determine when to go on, and there's a steady form for that. But in case I'm sort of tangled up in the guitar wire, then it's not that the computer goes on without me, because I can go on whenever I want. And some parts have more like a solo part, so they're more free in length. So yeah, those differ a bit, but not too much.
Does he use stock Ableton effects for processing his electrical guitar and bass?
Within the project, I try to work as much as possible with the Ableton effects, because they work very good with the program, and if you turn them off, they're really off. They don't take any CPU in the background or anything. But I mean, for guitar, I mean, I also use some UAD plugins, and I know for the guitars I have some like an amp simulator on there, and like some compression, and so there, and some sound toys as well are in there. So there are some different effects, but mostly the Ableton effects.
Binkbeats seem to like complicated structures and rhythms.
I guess I do. I mean, not all. Like most of my songs are pretty much still in 4/4, but I do tend to use patterns that are in different measures. So like 6/8 patterns, 5/8, 9/4. Like, I mean, there are some patterns that go over the bar. I don't know. It's something, maybe. I mean, it probably stems from me being a percussionist. It's just, I find it interesting that you have a rhythm, a repetitive rhythm, but every time it sounds different because you put it in a different perspective. So, I mean, if you put a 9/4/4 over a 4/4 bar, it sounds a little bit different every time. So, yeah, I like to play with these kind of creative ways.
straight from the treasure chest. This time we got Fugazi by Marillion. And man, it's stunning. It's the band's, I can't open that. It's the band's second album, starting with Assessing, that's a play on words, and another one, Punch and Judy. Punch being the guy and Judy being the gal who is punched by Punch. Jigsaw, Emerald Lies, there's hits after hits after hits, culminating in Fugazi with a line, do you realize, do you realize, do you realize this world is totally Fugazi? And the instrumentation obviously is what you would expect from a early 80s production. There's a DX7, Yamaha GS1, Korg CX3. They also had a church organ recorded at Angel Studios, and man, it's stunning. The lyrics alone, they are like a bath in warm oil, and the melodies are like it's not like songs, it's like little universes that you are drawn into. And of course the voice of Fish is incredible, and the production also, that album is perfect. Fugazi by Marillion.